Hello, this is a video showing how you can add a target task to debug configuration to program external flash for ColdFire using CodeWarrior 10.2 from Freescale. And I'm going to go ahead and show how to build the debug configuration from scratch. You may already have one built and you can just modify what you need to, but I'll show the whole step. So what I've done is created a bare board project. I'm using the MCF5329 as an example, and I'm using the eval board for this part, which is the M5329 EVB. And I just had CodeWarrior set up this project by default. Haven't changed anything yet, except I did add a build configuration to build for Flash. By default, it's set up to only build for internal RAM. So if we look right now at the debug configurations, there's the internal RAM debug configuration. It also comes with the console internal RAM option as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clone this configuration and then change it for the external flash instead. And what I'll do before that is we're going to import a target task into CodeWarrior. So down here you can click on the target tasks, and when you click on auto flash, it'll show over here which tasks are included in CodeWarrior. I have none at the moment. These tasks tell CodeWarrior how to do certain things during the debug and connection process that is a little more complicated than a normal connection like programming internal RAM. So I'm going to go ahead and import one now, and I can right click on this folder and say import, and CodeWarrior should take me to this path. This is buried inside the CodeWarrior directory. So here's CodeWarrior 10.2 MCU bin plugin support target task, and I'm going to go down into Flash Programmer ColdFire and find the script for my eval board, which is right here, the M5329 EVBE underscore external flash. So this is a target task that's already built for the eval board to program the external flash that we have on that board. You click open, and now this is added to the target task, and later we can use this in our debug configuration. There's another step that I want to do before I set up my configuration, because when you are programming external flash, CodeWarrior has to know how to set up the flex bus, the registers to control the interface to talk to the external flash. That's done with the .config file, and you load that as part of your debug connection so that when the flash programming routine is downloaded to internal RAM, it'll also set up the flex bus, and those are also provided by CodeWarrior. So what I want to do though is copy those into my local project. So if you navigate to your CodeWarrior installation, which is here, CodeWarrior MCU v10.2, go down under MCU, ColdFire support, initialization files, and in here we have files for our eval boards as well. And the ones that I want are these two for my board, the M5329 EVBE. There's two files, .config and .mem. I'm going to go ahead and copy both of them, and I'm going to put them in my local project for my example here. Which is down here, and you'll see when you look in your projects that CodeWarrior sets up under project settings debugger, they already have .config and .mem files. Those are not set up by default here for the eval board and the external flash, so that's what I'm adding right now. So I'll paste those two files in here. They're added. I can go back in CodeWarrior and I can look at that same location. They're not showing up yet. I can hit the F5 to update them, and there they are, and now I can use them in my debug configuration. So now I should be ready to go ahead and set up my new debug connection for external flash and a new debug configuration to take advantage of it. So we'll do that now by opening up debug configurations. Go up here to the little green bug, pull down that arrow to the right of it, hit debug configurations, and I want to clone the internal RAM one here just to give me something to get started with. So I select it, I hit this button up here which will duplicate the current configuration. It's going to create a new one for me, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this so I know what it is, and I'm going to call it external flash. The names are not important, they're arbitrary, it's just something I'm going to call it. And at this point the next thing I need to do is set up a new connection as well. So right here this is defaulted to the internal RAM connection. I'm going to change this right now. I'm going to click new, click a hardware connection, click next. You got to give this a name as well. And then for the target, I'm going to click new again. You also have to give this a name, and this name has to be different, so I'm just going to add target at the end. Again, these names are arbitrary. And then my target type, this is where you pick your device, so I'm going to scroll down and find the MCF5329 right there. And this is where you set up the .config and .mem file that I copied over. So if you already have these from a classic CodeWarrior project, you can just use those. I copied them over as you saw earlier. So I'm going to say initialize target, click the browse button, and because I have this in my local project directory, I can just browse through my workspace down to where I stored that file, and this is the .config file. So I select that, click OK. You'll notice it makes this workspace relative by default. You can change that if you'd like. And then I'm also going to click on the memory tab and do the same thing and browse to that same location and pick the .mem file right there. So now I've got my .mem file and my .config file loaded for my new connection. I click finish. We need a connection type. This is your actual debugger. I'm going to use the P&E ColdFire multi-link and click finish. So now my connection is done. I'm going to wrap up the rest of my debug configuration here. I want this to be associated with my external flash build target, which means I also need up here, I need the application associated with that as well. Okay, so now we have a new connection using the .config and .mem files for the external flash. The next thing we need to do is tell this debug configuration to use the target task. So I click on the debugger tab, click on the download sub-tab here, and we cannot use the standard download when we talk to external flash. So we uncheck this, we check execute tasks, we click add, and we're going to add the task that I imported earlier into my workspace. So we add this, we tell it that we want this to execute on the initial launch, that will program the flash when we first do the connection. We can uncheck execute on successive runs. That would be like if you did a reset, you don't need it to reprogram. So click OK, and I will click apply. So now my debug configuration is saved. Before I launch the debugger, I want to show you one more thing. If you go back here to your target task and you double click on it, it will bring up this panel where you can configure the target task. Here is the device name for the flash. So remember, we imported this, and this is the flash device that's on our eval board. You can also set up the base address, the size of the flash, etc. So if you're using this on your own hardware, you can configure a separate flash programming task for your own flash. This is the base address of the flash. This is the base address of the target task. So when we connect with the debugger, it's going to download this little application to address 40 million, which is the internal SRAM, and it'll execute out of that. And then you can also give it the programmer actions here. By default, it erases and programs the flash, and then it verifies, and you can add more actions over here. So at this point, we should be ready to go ahead and connect to our flash. So I'm going to select debug configurations again, select that external flash debug configuration I just completed, click the debug button. This is going to launch the debug perspective, and you need to wait for the progress bar down here to go away. This will also show in the console window. Once the target task starts executing, you'll get some feedback. So at this point I can see it's erasing my flash. Now it's reading the flash ID and it's programming the flash. So all of that was being done by the target task that I created, and at this point I'm executing in flash. I can step through my code, look at my variables, etc., and this is all being done out of flash. So you can use these same steps and add your own target tasks. Now when you have your own hardware and you have different flash, you may need to build your own flash algorithms. And we have some app notes that come in CodeWarrior to tell you how to do that. So if you go back to our Windows Explorer and find where CodeWarrior is installed, if you look under the MCU directory and then the help subdirectory and then the PDF directory, so my full path is shown here. I'm at CodeWarrior MCU version 10.2 /MCU/help/PDF, and in here there's two app notes of interest, AN 3967 and AN 3859. If you open both of these up, they tell you how to write your own flash programming applet if you need to, as well as how to add your Flash Programmer algorithm to CodeWarrior. So once you have those integrated in, you can build your own target task using those, and you can talk to the external flash on your own board. Thank you very much.